Welcome to another episode of Point and Click, a Telltale podcast. I am Jordan C. Johnson.
And I am Adam Razak.
And today we're diving into Season 2 of The Walking Dead. Let's see, the first episode, which is called All That Remains. Now, okay, this is one I think I've alluded to a few times that has been one of my least favorite Telltale episodes. But I think you've also alluded that it's one of your favorites. So,
correct.
Okay, is this still one of your favorites, and why?
Yes, absolutely. This is one of my favorites. I think for me, what I find the most interesting about this episode is that I love it almost like as a reset button, where it's kind of like no matter what kind of Clementine you groom in season 1, I feel like the ability to, Telltale's basically handing you the keys to the kingdom after like a certain set number of trials that Clementine has to go through, where it feels like her worldview, her personality are kind of being stripped away from like these really traumatic, horrible things that she goes through within like the opening. I'd say maybe like the opening hour is just nothing but really like terrible, painful stuff happening to Clementine. And I love that because I feel like even though, granted, there really is very little choice involved with how you deal with these situations, I feel like this is one of the very rare times where it works thematically, not having a choice, because it's basically like you are resetting Clementine as a character. And it's only after a certain point is when like the dialogue options start to pop up and you can decide what kind of Clementine you are going to make her be. And I think that's what I find the most interesting about this episode.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying about the lack of choice in some areas being relevant. I guess if you're taking it as, Clementine just having to deal, kind of on her own and not having control over situations. The first time I played this, what really bothered me about it was the shed sequence. I felt like this episode, there isn't, and through large swaths of it, there's not a lot of choice happening. And that, that takes various forms, whether it's the bathroom at the beginning playing out how it plays out, or the dog playing out how it plays out, whatever. That stuff was like, I was just kind of uninterested in for a while. When I felt uninvested, but it wasn't like egregious. I was like, okay, I guess we're just going through the motions. I don't really have any say in this. The shed sequence really bothered me the first time, because I felt like I didn't want to make the choice it was forcing me to make. I didn't feel like I had to go into the house. If it were up to me the first time I played it, I would have just waited in the shed. I would have just listened to them. Like, I understood where they were coming from. The second time, it didn't bother me so much. I still don't love this episode, but I get what they're doing. I get why they don't give you a choice. I get that, they're basically arguing that, she's probably going to get infected if she doesn't do something about it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still feel like the way it's done is a little awkward, and that they just don't give you any say at all. I mean, this is a common theme in these episodes where, that's like one of the biggest flaws with Telltales, when they just don't let you make a decision. But I can see the necessity of it, and it didn't bother me as much this time.
I think, as I've said, like with past episodes, is that I would take the trade-off of not having as much of a say in it if what I was watching was really compelling, which I think this is the case. Like, one of the very rare exceptions, I would say, along with like the finale of Tales from the Borderlands. I think this and the finale of Tales from the Borderlands are like the only two times I've ever like looked at a Telltale game, recognized that I really did not have a say in what was going on, and that my choices really didn't matter. But I think the overall presentation of it is just so strong for me, for my own personal taste, is that I can look past a lot of that. Granted, it still bugs me here and there, especially with the opening bathroom scene, which, well, I mean, we'll get to that, but it's occasionally it will bug me, but I really didn't have that big of a problem with this episode. Like, well, even after playing it a second time.
At least the bathroom scene, like, it kind of makes sense that you don't have a choice because your character is helpless. You're not armed. I mean, there's nothing you can do in that situation. You're just stuck. You know?
She could still take the gun into the bathroom.
Yeah, well, yes, that's true. I guess once you're past that point, you know, then you're just out of luck. And that,
yeah.
Now that you mention it, that's a pretty egregious thing to make a character in a zombie apocalypse situation do. Why would you leave it there? But I don't know. At least there's a, like I said, once you're past that point, there's nothing you can do in that situation. Unlike the shed, where it could possibly be argued that maybe you could make a decision there.
Well, I think with Clementine, with the shed thing, I think it's just more, I'd say, like, common sense to try to get some help with regarding the wound on the arm, which, like, I would have been okay even if they had given you the option to, like, stay there. You know, if you want to risk that and try to survive the night and not stitch it up, and face horrible consequences in the morning, I guess.
Sure. Well, especially considering, you know, you're now with this new group who doesn't trust you, and why should they?
Sure.
And, you know, if you can sort of understand some of their reservations, then why would you want to jeopardize that by forcing it? And that's what bothered me the first time. The second time, I kind of felt like their hostility and suspicion toward Clementine was a little bit ridiculous, especially considering that she's like 10 years old. Like, a lot of the things that happen in this episode are a little silly when you start to think about who they're dealing with. Like, I think it's alleviated because we've spent so much time with Clementine, watching her kind of grow over the first season, and see what she's been exposed to. But they don't know that. For all they know, she's a little kid. You know what I mean? So, like, the fact that they're treating her like this adult, like, spy who's going to destroy their group, it's like, you guys know she's like 10 years old, right? This is insane.
Well,
like,
they make a point of having multiple sides with that argument, which I like. I mean, it's just unfortunate that the ultimate the ultimate decision they reach is just to lock her up in the tool shed. But I mean, they do talk about it for not like an extended period of time, but they do have different people with different sides, and there is that interesting option to, like, try to appeal to somebody like Luke or Rebecca, and it's like okay, I can see where the group dynamic, like, the seeds of that are starting to come from. For me, that whole sequence, it's just more of a way of getting to know the characters and, like, how they're feeling. And
what is the name of the pregnant woman?
Rebecca,
okay. I think I do always think it's funny in this episode when, you know, you're in that scene toward the end where you're sort of, you know, having it out with her, and one of the dialogue options is, "I'm just a little girl." Like, that dialogue option makes me laugh every time because it's such a reminder. Like, this is a crazy conversation to be putting a little kid into.
I always go for the you know, whose baby is it? You better start being nice to me. I love that, and I love the look on Rebecca's face whenever she.
I did that too. They should let you go farther though. I wish they let you push her more. Like, it's another one just like Larry from the first season, where it's like, why are you not letting me push this fucking piece of shit harder? You know what I mean? Like, you're just forced into sort of being passive about it and letting it go, which is I don't understand why they do that in, like, series after series.
Because I think if you were to push it that far, it's almost like, why would she even keep you alive? Why didn't she, like, if you're gonna, like, piss her off to that degree and then keep on being with her throughout the rest of the game, it's kind of like, why is she even with her in the first place? Why hasn't she, like, killed her in her sleep or something?
Sure, but that could create a dramatic tension, you know? Like, that's interesting.
Sure.
You can create more, you know, anger there and more, you know, conflict between them. Like, again, I just feel like they're, you know, removing options that could be interesting just because I don't know. Like, it's just another one where it's like, why do you want me to only have it play out this one way? Why can't I make it more awkward and uncomfortable if I want to?
I mean, I guess I could potentially see that being interesting. It's just, for me personally, like, creating even more like conflict and anger regarding that. It just seems kind of it seems odd, like given that like if like the shit that goes down in this series, it just doesn't really for me make much sense to want to bring in that amount of hostility with Rebecca like right off the bat. Especially
hey man,
since,
if I were allowed to be more hostile with Rebecca and Larry, I'd be doing it all fucking day. Fuck.
Well, Larry, people. Sure, but Rebecca, like even Rebecca, I'm like, yeah, you kind of suck like right at the beginning, but she does soften up, which I'm like, okay.
Well, that to be fair, I don't remember how her character arc goes, so we'll see. Okay. Yeah, I have not played this game, and a lot of these games I won't have played in a few years now.
Oh wow!
So okay. Yeah, like I've only played all of these once. This is my first replay for all of them.
I think it's like my fourth time going through this.
You're crazy.
I think.
Yeah, so this is all. I mean, this is all somewhat fresh to me.
Okay. Fair enough. So one of my like little touches that I really like about this episode is that how you never hear from Krista ever again. Like,
yeah,
I love
that's
that.
True.
I love that. It's like because this whole series when I first played it, I expected Krista to show up somewhere in this, but she never does. And I like that it's keeping with this theme of like, hey, like your connection with somebody can be cut in a matter of seconds and you will never see them again.
Right.
And life's not all about just like randomly magically reuniting with everybody. It's just once Krista's gone, it's like she's gone. Which is fine because I've never really liked Krista to begin with from that, but I just like that it's keeping with this like semi realistic kind of thing. Like it doesn't feel like they're trying to cram in all these like standard plot developments with every single character that gets introduced.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with that. Yeah, so let's see. What were some of the... I'm trying to like even remember. I feel like not much happens in this episode, really. I mean, what were even like the big decisions in this, other than dealing with Rebecca at the end?
Whether you wanted to go with Pete or Nick, I think is like the big like exclamation point at the end.
Yes. Okay, so that whole sequence, all that stuff with them, I actually really liked. I thought that was some of the best stuff in the episode. So I did play this episode in 2 chunks, and I think my experience might have been a little bit affected by forgetting how is Lee the young one? No, not Lee. What's his name? What the fuck is his name?
Nick?
I don't remember that. Yes. So when you first meet them, he's like kind of an asshole to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he almost shoots you. I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I think I kind of forgot that by the time I played it. I finished the episode because I put like a week between them.
Oh, okay.
So when I instantly found myself siding with Nick when he's just like being sort of bullied by his uncle or whoever that guy is. And I was thinking about it as I was playing. I was like, I think this guy might have been treating me poorly before, but oh well. Because I just wound up kind of siding with him, and I saved him at the end.
See, I always go with Pete. Like the fact that Nick like almost shoots me, and then he's kind of like he just seems like a big baby throughout most of the episode. Like, and Pete's like, "Boy, you need to grow a spine. You need to stop being this like scared little nephew." And I'm just like, "Yeah, grow some balls, man. Stop being a little pussy and just grow some balls." Jesus.
Yeah.
So like I like Pete. I think Pete is a very charismatic, interesting character. It sucks how little he's in this series because I think he's one of the better characters among the group. But
well, he was in mine very, very little. Yeah. He's dead already.
See, he survives throughout this episode for me. So, and I almost wished Nick had died at the end of this episode instead of just like him running off. It's like, oh well, gotta see him again. I'm not looking forward to that because I don't like Nick. I think Nick for me is like the Ben of this series, because Nick is just such a stupid fuck up in some situations, and I love how in this series like you can actually like really influence what happens to him. It's that I think is a big step up from how they treat like how they force you to drag Ben along throughout most of the series.
Interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to that now because I don't remember how his arc goes.
Oh, yeah, it's really good how his arc can potentially end. It's really cool.
I am very excited for this series in general. Like even despite the setbacks with my changing feelings on the first series and disappointment with Batman. Like I from what I remember, this series is great. Especially like as it goes, it only gets better.
I think this might be my favorite one. I
Yeah.
think like I'll have to go through Borderlands again to be sure, but
This one's definitely my favorite. I think I think this episode is the weakest of the series, and then the next 4 episodes, from what I remember, are all aces.
the only one I don't even now like really care for is the 4th episode, but we'll get to that eventually. But like the 3rd episode for me is like probably my favorite Telltale episode of all time. Like I fucking love the 3rd episode.
For me, my favorite Telltale episode is I think either the 3rd or the 4th one, and I don't remember which one has which part in it. But we'll get. I'm excited to talk about whichever one that is.
It's the one with Michael Madsen in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that the 3rd one?
Yes, that's the 3rd one.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the one I'm thinking of then.
Yeah. I guess I'll get the dog part out of the way.
Oh God.
Oh my God, I hate. Oh, I hate as much as I love this episode and I love this series, I absolutely just hate going through that dog part.
It's long and it's
it.
boring.
See, I think it's way too long. I think they draw it out for intentional like quote emotional impact.
Yeah.
But God damn it, that's like
It takes forever.
oh, it's like I'm just saying it like as a sap for dogs. It's like. Just, ugh,
oh, that's what bothers you about
I
it?
hate that. Like I hate it. I hate
You
it.
hate
in
watching the
movies
dog
as well.
die?
Like there are movies that I just will refuse to watch if I know like a dog gets like injured or sad or whatever.
Well,
I
yeah.
can't do it. I just
Yeah, that's not a problem I share, so that doesn't bother. Like
Ugh.
I'm hesitant to like even say how I feel about that scene, but like that, yeah, it's almost funny to me. Like after that fucking dog bites you, to what happens to it. Yeah, I don't even shoot the thing. I just let it sit there.
see, I always just stab it whenever
Of course you do.
It's like,
No, I'm
sorry.
like, fuck you, dog. You got what you deserve.
No. Poor Sammy.
Like for me, it's not even just. It's not that I feel like it's not so much that it's drawing it out for emotional impact when the dog dies. I mean, maybe, but for me, it's more that I feel like what they're going for is interesting. With the whole like opening of this after the bathroom thing. I feel like they're going for like establishing mood and making things feel uncomfortable and tense, and you're like waiting for something to happen, which is I kind of feel like more interesting in theory than in execution in most video games. I think it's much more. I think it's much more satisfying to do that kind of thing in a movie where you can watch like visual craft being built. For me, when I'm actually playing through it in a video game, I just kind of feel like, okay, like can we get to the next thing?
What do you mean? Elaborate just a little bit more because I'm trying to.
I think I have a harder time with that kind of atmosphere building in video games than in something like a movie. I think in a movie, because the director has such control over what you're seeing and how that's impacting the character within that narrative and what the character is doing within that narrative, it can be very satisfying. Like I think Aliens is one of my all-time favorite movies, and a huge portion of that movie is just visual atmosphere and establishing tension and discomfort and waiting for something to happen. Like huge portions of that movie are devoted to that. Same thing with the first Alien and tons of other movies of that type. I feel like that's kind of what they're doing here, where they're making you sort of uncomfortable and they're making you wait and they're trying to build this sort of visual dread. But I don't feel like that's as easy to do in a video game. I think part of it has to do with, the graphical restraints, and I guess on a personal note, like me generally not finding a video game background is visually interesting as what can be created in a movie. But also the fact that when you're watching a movie, your engagement with that is visual, and your engagement with that is based in what the filmmaker, the art is directing you to. and that experience is very crafted. But when you're in a video game, it's not really the same thing because you're sort of deciding where you go, what you do. You're moving through that environment. You're in a much more active role than you are when you're watching a movie. So that active role, when there's really nothing to do, starts to become for me like tiresome. You know, I'm not sure I'd want a full video game of like Aliens where all you're doing is just like roaming through hallways with almost nothing happening. Like after a while I'd be like, okay, when's something gonna happen? You know? I think it works differently than a movie when you're actually playing and you're engaging in gameplay mechanics. I think when all you're doing is fucking walking and like looking for things and petting a dog, it's like, okay, this is taking too long. It's like the train scene all over again.
See, that's interesting because I'm kind of, I understand where you're coming from, and I agree when it comes to a lot of movies, like especially like an obvious example for me is just like The Shining, which I think most of that movie is just build up, and it's just really incredible build up. But for me, like I get more out of an interactive experience than I do out of a like simply just watching something. Like if I like something like I guess I'll name drop Resident Evil 7. Like recently Resident Evil 7, it's like there is maybe like 30 minutes of build up before it starts to get to like the really gruesome shit, but it's just so like really well done, and it actually is very tightly crafted. It doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room to go and explore. It's just go down this hallway, like see all this stuff, but because like you're in control of it, and it's like impeccably designed with like visual atmosphere and like really great sound design.
That's
and
true.
Like interacting with it where it's like you're in that situation and it feels like just really tense and you have to make the decision to go forward. Where it's like for me, a horror movie, whenever I watch one, I mean even a really good one, I still don't get that sense of personal investment like I do in a video game where
that I don't agree with at all. Like I find it much hard to personally invest in most video games than I do in movies. For me, I think it's just that I think gameplay mechanics tend to be a hurdle for me to really become invested in something versus movies, like they don't really have that layer to them. Though I do think what you're saying is true. I think maybe it's not so much video games themselves that have this problem. I think it might just be this video game, because I don't think the art style in these games is very interesting or appealing. I don't think anything that happens at the beginning of this game is particularly interesting. But, for example, going back to Aliens, that Colonial Marines game that came out a while ago, fucking terrible game. Awful.
Yeah.
But I will say, everything that happens... actually, no, that's not the game I'm thinking of. It's I'm thinking of that other one, Alien Isolation, the more recent one.
Really?
Which also I found very uninteresting, and I got bored very quickly.
Wow.
But from what I remember, before anything happens in that game, before you actually encounter any aliens and you have to really start like fighting or running, whatever.
Yeah.
That game does a good job of making that ominous atmosphere interesting. Like you're just kind of building up. You're just going through and experiencing these this tension. And I remember feeling that part was actually really interesting. I feel like the art style is compelling. It does feel ominous and foreboding, and it does kind of pull you into the world. But then the problem happens for me with that game is once the game starts, I'm like, oh, okay, it's a game. I get it. You know what I mean? Like I kind of wish the whole game were more like that. I wasn't interested in the actual gameplay after that. I just wanted more of that. So I guess maybe it just depends on the game. And in this particular case, I just didn't feel that level of investment like I did in something like Alien Isolation.
Interesting. I think for you and I like disagree. It's more like a case by case basis, I guess.
Sure.
Where like for me, even like Walking Dead or a lot of these Telltale series, I do find the art style interesting in like a very I guess like even though I'm not a fan of the graphic novel, I still like how this looks, almost like a living graphic novel. I think a lot of the build up is interesting in this episode. Like even though I hate watching the dog, like I love it in theory because it basically is like Clementine is seeing this creature that she's known throughout her whole life to be this very like timid kind of like playful happy image, and then to see it like attack her and she has to like kick it away and then see it with like its guts spilling open and like the tent spikes through it. To me, that's just another a thing where it's breaking down her thoughts on like the old world, and her like really enforcing that she is on her own at this point, and like she has to make these decisions and no one's going to come to help her in this situation. And the same thing with the stitching, I guess.
Well, yeah, which is great, except for the fact that because of the way this game is designed, to do that involves you actually like spending 10 minutes walking around an abandoned campsite looking at stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the difference. If you did that in a movie, you can. First of all, I don't think it would take 10 minutes to get that across. It also wouldn't take like you having to look, trying to figure out what you're missing, or like you know, if you're watching a character, you know, go through an environment and just gather things. You can do things like, you know, use framing or whatever to pull the viewer's attention to certain other things, or develop the character through that visual, or, you know, establish discomfort. Like, look at a movie like the House of the Devil, where all that movie, like so much of that movie is just like a babysitter in a house by herself. That's it. There's nothing in there. Like, nothing is happening during that stuff, but it's constantly tense and uncomfortable, and it's only because of the way Ty West uses framing, where he's constantly like making you focus on the background, making you look over her shoulder, making you like examine the environment she's in when she's not paying attention to it. Even though there's nothing there, his framing is so clever that you're constantly looking and feeling like something is going to be there. And that's something you can do by, you know, when an artist is, you know, designing the frame of what you're looking at. But in a video game where the camera just kind of has to follow you because you're doing actions, the actions become the focus. Like, there's really, at least so far, I haven't seen a game that do that where it really becomes anything else, because you have to be able to see what the character's doing. You have to, just for mechanics sake, you have to allow the player to understand like what's going on and what they need to be doing. So that makes the focus of that what you're doing and not the visuals. So it's very unintuitive. Like, for me, you get sidetracked by the action, and it's much harder to become invested in the atmosphere, because the mechanics and what you're doing are not based on the atmosphere.
See, again, I disagree, because I think for me, I don't go and do like every single thing in the campsite. Like, I don't play with the dog. I didn't want to. I just like at the end I was like, okay, I feel I'm clearly missing a piece because it's not letting me go any further. So I just kind of had to like waste time on figuring out what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing next. See, like when I was going through it, I liked it more in the sense that, you know, this is tense, because I know this series, and I know this sort of like mundane roaming around trying to find something. It is building up. Even like the first time I played it, I was tense. I was like kind of feeling really uncomfortable around this situation, because I know something is going to happen in this world, as like because I've seen it through like season 1. I've seen it like also with the opening with the bathroom, where like just going to the bathroom ends with the death of a character from series 1. And it's like, it puts you on edge, where it's like anything can happen. So even like something as mundane as like roaming this campsite for a bit of food, it's like, okay, something is going to happen. And that buildup is just really, really uncomfortable and unnerving. And even if there's no like framing like in a movie, which I agree with the House of the Devil comparison. But it's like, for me, still walking around and examining stuff and still just being in the thick of it, it's still just very effective for me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me it's just unintuitive, because what makes something to me that kind of atmosphere building ominous isn't necessarily the threat that something is going to happen. I think it's Aliens isn't interesting because something might happen, because that's plot. Aliens is interesting because James Cameron is a good director and the visuals in that movie are interesting. You know, like The House of the Devil isn't tense because something's going to happen. It's tense because Ty West is a good director and knows how to make you feel uncomfortable with his camera lens. And like, for me, that's the difference. Like, that level isn't there in this. I mean, yes, it's only uncomfortable in the sense that sure you get the feeling that something bad is probably going to happen, but that's kind of it. Like there's not much. There's nothing visually interesting for me to latch onto personally.
I think for me, it's like I tend to like a lot of the plot narrative stuff a lot more than you do, because I know you're like really into aesthetics and all that, and that's fine. I totally respect that. It's just for me personally, I like the narrative form of like plot details and stuff like that. That's just more my thing.
Yeah, for me that's cancer. So I think that explains where our difference in this is coming from. That stuff is the least interesting aspect of art.
I think that explains where most of our differences come from.
Probably. That's a pretty fundamental difference.
Yeah. Though I do not think the framing in this really is all that, looking at it just as from a framing standpoint, I don't think a lot of this episode is very, I guess, stand outish in terms of framing devices and stuff like that, which I think there are better, visually more interesting Telltale games out there. I think the best is still The Wolf Among Us, but I still think for me, everything that happens in this episode is just really compelling, even when it's building up to the big moments or just talking, or those big moments that actually do happen. I think a lot of this episode is just really fucking good. Just gets me in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I wish I could share that enthusiasm, but I think at the end of the day, I don't hate this one as much as I did before. I think it's just middle of the road. It elicits very little from me.
I think the stitching bit, the stitching bit almost gets me as much as the dog part does, which I hate. I hate how dragged out that is, but in a good way, of course. But
yeah, it's
just watching you, and then you have to control the actions of the needle, and it's just, oh my god, it's almost like body horror. I hate it. It's almost as bad as the orbital fractures they're obsessed with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the orbital fractures are worse, personally. But
no, they are worse.
It's yeah. I mean, I appreciate the effort to make it experiential and make you try to feel what she's having to drag herself through. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the effort.
So I don't know how you feel initially, or how much you remember about Sarah, but I really don't like Sarah as a character.
Is she the little kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't really know if it's her fault. I feel like I more just hate her dad right off the bat for making her that way. No, this is bullshit. You're gonna get her killed, and I'm pretty sure you do get her killed, if I recall.
I think through I think her arc only becomes really interesting in episodes 3 and 4, but these first 2 episodes with Sarah is just it's shut the fuck up.
I liked her in this episode, actually. I
really?
think she felt like a little kid. She reminded me of little kids that I have met. I think they did. It's fine for me. In this episode, I like I said, she doesn't bother me. Her dad bothers me, especially I just. Again, I come back to the whole way they're treating Clementine when she's a little kid. He's a fucking doctor. He should know better than this. It makes she clearly, even if she were bitten, she's not going to turn in 5 minutes. You know what I mean? You can patch her up. It's going to be fine. You know, it feels a little forced.
But do they know how long the infection happens? I know you do as a player, but
well, I feel I
don't know if they know though.
With as long as the infection has been a thing in this world at this point, everybody should at least have an idea of how it functions, you know? I'd be very surprised if they have not encountered anyone turning before.
I don't know. I think maybe they would be paranoid. I think them being paranoid over anybody makes sense. Just even if it is Clementine, and even if it does look like a dog bite or something like that, there is that tension with it, slight paranoia in there.
Sure, but what's the worst that can happen? I mean,
they
keep
die
her outside. No, but not really, because all you have to do is keep her outside, fix her up, and have somebody else have a gun at her head the whole time. That's. I mean, it's not like she's gonna do anything in that situation.
If she turns into a zombie, though, I mean, like, look how quickly that zombie was able to get into the shed just from removing the one, like, piece of board under the house. It's like if she
Right.
were to turn into a zombie and, like, still
Yeah,
leave her
but
out
that's
in the
why you
shed.
have the gun at her head, so the second she starts turning, you just shoot her and it's over.
What are we arguing about now? I don't even
The practical realities of living in a zombie world.
know. I don't really know where to go from that.
I think we kind of covered it all in
Yeah.
this one.
God, talk about awkward silence.
Yeah, I'm just like trying to wrangle my fucking cat over here. He's making noise,
Ugh.
so I'm sorry to anybody who's hearing my cat messing with shit. So I mean, for me, my top 5 is not affected by this. It's
Okay.
not. It doesn't crack it.
So my top 5 now are number 5, Children of Arkham. Number 4, Long Road Ahead. Number 3, Starved for Help. Number 2 is this episode, and number 1 is still the. Actually, I don't know. Maybe. I'm gonna say it's a tie right now between the Walking Dead season 1 finale and this episode, because I really, really love this episode, and I need to give that more thought regarding like if I like this more than the season 1 finale, because they're both really like top notch Telltale in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think this is even close.
So Jordan, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter at @5th_opinion.
And you can find me, Razorblade Mango, on YouTube, and you can follow our Twitter handle, which is at a Telltale Pod, capital A, capital T, capital P. And next week, season 2, episode 2.
All right. Maybe we'll finally get to a season 3 sometime in the next 2 years.
Nah, we'll get there. We'll be all right.
Eventually.
Yeah. It's if they just hurry up and release episode 3 already. Good God. Feels like
They
it's
can
been a
wait because
while.
it's not affecting me at all. I'm just sitting here. I don't know what's going on.
I'm just waiting for them to pull out when they're finally going to release the Guardians of the Galaxy thing, so I know when to actually buy it. Because that might be the first one I don't buy day one.
Yeah, I haven't bought the new Walking Dead yet. I'm just gonna wait till we get there.
Like I said, I wish I had your willpower.
Hey man, I'm getting this is Telltale overload for me replaying all these, so
That's true.
I'm sated. And like I said, I just can't help but have my enthusiasm hurt a little bit by Batman. Like
Yeah.
it's hard for me to get interested now.
I mean, it's like I still know they're capable of doing good things, but just Batman was just such a letdown that it's like, I don't know. It's their future for me right now is just very questionable.
Right.
At
They
best.
need to make me feel like I'm experiencing something new again.
Yeah.
Like that's what made the first few Telltale games so great. Is you're like, this is great. I feel like I've never played anything like this. And now I'm like, well, I've played a lot of other games like this and they're all by Telltale.
I feel like they should, if they were to never make a game for like the next 5 years, I think I'd be okay with that. Like, and then just come back with like a really excellent series. Like I can wait 5 years for them to get back to like top form.
Right. And make it longer. Make like a fucking 10 episode series that like has a crazy arc and has all kinds of branching decisions and shit.
That'd be great. That's what I'd do if I was in charge.
Yeah. I'm sure they wouldn't make a lot of money with that business model, but hey.
I think the name is what sells it alone now. I mean, even with Telltale getting a lot of shit, like they're still really popular amongst just like your average gamer.
Well, I think they've earned it. It's just I feel like they're just resting on their laurels too much now. It's the problem is when you start to see the formula, it becomes a lot less interesting to play.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate, but
Yeah.
hopefully some series will come along where they'll kick back into high gear. That would make me very happy. See that. Anyway, see you guys later.
Yeah, that's it.
Bye.